Great news, everyone. Inflation is down, the Fed is celebrating, or at least doing the central banker version of celebrating, which is a very restrained nod. So why does buying eggs and rent still feel like you're being mugged? Because inflation went down doesn't mean what most people think it means. Let's fix that. When a headline says inflation is down, it means prices are climbing slower than before, not that prices are dropping. Think of it like a staircase. Each year is a step up. Some years, the step is huge. Lately, the steps have gotten smaller, but smaller steps still go up. Nobody's walking back down. Overall, US prices are roughly 30% higher than they were in the summer of 2019. Groceries and rent have often run even hotter than that. The rate cooled off, but the total never did, and it's not supposed to. For prices to actually fall, you'd need deflation, the scary uncle of economics, usually seen at the same parties as recessions and mass layoffs. Nobody's rooting for that. The Fed isn't trying to lower prices, they're trying to stop them from rising as fast. That's their game, and it's also the whole source of confusion. Here's a quick way to feel this in your gut. Your pizza place raises prices 10% one year, then only 5% the next. The news calls that cooling inflation, which is technically true, but you're not living in technically true. You're living with a pizza that now costs 15.5% more than it used to, not 15%, because the second increase applies to the already higher price. Inflation compounds. Apparently, even the pizza understands compound growth. That 15.5% is baked in. Thank you, I'll see myself out. Nobody's giving it back, and the shop definitely isn't rounding down to be nice. For a while, wages did catch up in aggregate. Real wage growth outpaced inflation for many workers in recent years. That's genuinely good news, but rarely makes the headlines. But averages hide unevenness. Some sectors, warehouse work, trades, food service, saw real gains. Salaried office workers, whose raises get decided once a year in a slow HR cycle, mostly did not feel caught up for a long stretch. And timing makes it worse. Rent jumps the moment your lease renews. Groceries reprice weekly. Your salary, if you're lucky, moves once a year, in a negotiation where you have way less leverage than your landlord. So even where wages technically caught up on paper, the feeling of catching up lagged by months or even years. And feelings, as it turns out, are basically the whole economy. Companies learned something useful a while back. People notice a price hike, but they don't notice a candy bar getting 8% smaller. That's called shrinkflation, and that's well documented, not a conspiracy theory. Rather than raise the sticker price and trigger a customer revolt, companies quietly shrink the product. A smaller box is usually just a higher price per ounce. And to their credit, official inflation statistics are actually designed to catch that. Shrinkflation isn't a perfect blind spot, but it is an imperfect one. The harder problem is skimpflation. Same size, same price, but cheaper ingredients or worse service. That's much tougher to measure, because there's no clean unit to compare. So part of why things feel pricier than the headline number is that some of the downgrade shows up in your actual experience. A thinner cut of chicken, a longer hold time, well before it shows up cleanly in the data, if it ever fully does. People want a villain here, and economists genuinely disagree. So let's not pretend there's a tidy one. Early on, the driver was mostly supply-side chaos. Shipping backlogs, chip shortages, an energy shock, a demand surge after lockdowns. Fairly uncontroversial. What's contested is what happened next. Some data shows corporate profit margins expanding. Companies raising prices by more than costs actually rose, riding the everyone expects hikes right now wave. Others argue that mostly normal catch-up in competition will erode over time. The honest answer? It was a mix. The mix varied by industry, and nobody serious claims to have the exact split. What's not in dispute, once prices rose and people adjust to paying them, there's very little incentive for anyone to lower them again voluntarily. Here's the human wrinkle. You anchor to an old familiar price. What coffee cost in 2019 is burned into your brain, and judge every new price against it. That's a well-known combo of anchoring and loss aversion. The old number feels like the real one, and every dollar above it feels like a loss, even if your paycheck grew too. Meanwhile, nobody tracks their own cumulative wage growth as a percentage. Nobody does the math at the register. Price increases are vivid and specific. Wage increases are abstract and slow. That mismatch is why "it feels expensive" can outlast the point where the statistics say things stabilized, sometimes by years. Nobody experiences a percentage. Everybody experiences a total, and the total is the thing sitting in your cart. Slower inflation means smaller steps on that staircase, and smaller steps compound better over time. Wage growth in aggregate has outpaced inflation for a real stretch. Uneven, slow to feel, but genuine. And some categories, electronics, some used cars, a handful of grocery items, have actually gotten cheaper as supply chains normalized. But improving and back to normal are different sentences. 2019 prices are gone. The plan was never to bring them back, just to stop them rising as fast. So if prices probably aren't going back down, how does anything start to feel affordable again? Paychecks have to gain ground, not just once, but consistently. Inflation needs to stay low while incomes rise faster than prices. Productivity has to improve, so businesses can pay more without just raising prices to cover it. And we need more of the things people are actually struggling to afford, housing above all. Because more supply is one of the few forces that reliably pulls a price down, instead of just slowing its climb. None of that requires the number on the price tag to travel backward. It requires your purchasing power to travel forward. That's the actual fix. Not rewinding the staircase, but climbing it faster than prices do. So next time a headline says inflation cools, translate it. Prices are still climbing, just less steeply. Your grocery bill isn't going to go back to 2019. Neither is your rent. Neither is that pizza. The economy isn't lying when it says inflation is down. It's just measuring something different from the number you feel every time you tap your card. Thanks for watching. Try not to think about egg prices for the rest of the day. You're welcome.